Hello, and welcome to the second episode of New Voices in AI. This is a new series from AIhub where we celebrate the voices of PhD students, early career researchers, and those with a new perspective on AI. I am Jo Daly, Engagement Manager for AIhub, and this week I am speaking to Isabel Cachola about some of her work. And without further ado, let's begin. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today for the second episode of New Voices in AI. If you just introduce yourself, who are you? Where are you?
So my name is Isabel Cachola. I'm a PhD student at Johns Hopkins University. So I'm currently in Baltimore, Maryland.
Nice. And how did you kind of get into AI?
So I kind of fell into the field a little bit and had a little bit of a snowball moment where once I got into it, I just kept going. So my undergrad was actually in mathematics, and my sophomore year of undergrad, I did this program at my university where we could be mentored by an graduate math student. And because I was a sophomore my fall semester, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So my mentor actually told me to just go on Wikipedia and look around till I found something interesting. So I stumbled upon computational linguistics. I thought it looked kind of cool. So I spent that semester just studying about machine translation and learning about some of the techniques. And I thought it was a lot of fun and really interesting. So from there, I took a class. And then from that class, I started getting involved in research. And it was basically just like a snowball moment of, this is really cool and I'm curious to learn more. And I just kept going from there.
It's always kind of funny how it sort of starts off as almost like an accident and then just like kind of keeps going and keep going.
Yeah. I didn't even know my field existed when I started undergrad.
So what are you kind of working on currently?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on interpretability of NLP models, specifically in the clinical domain. When we are working with these well-performing models, even if they have really high accuracy, particularly in high-risk settings like the clinical setting, users really want to understand and know where these predictions are coming from in order to trust them. So I've been working on trying to understand or trying to develop methods to better interpret these large, somewhat black box models.
It's like really valuable work to understand what's kind of going on in there, for sure. So how has kind of, I guess, your previous life experience kind of influenced your works?
Yeah, so I grew up in a trilingual household. My mother speaks Spanish and my dad speaks Tagalog. And then on top of that, I also grew up in the military, so we moved around a lot and I was exposed to a lot of different cultures growing up. So I think that like the combination of those things really gave me a lot of interest in language and how people communicate. Um, Math and computer science has always been a field of interest to me. So when I found out that I could sort of combine my interest in language with my interest in math and computer science, it was like the perfect field.
Yeah, that's like pretty serendipitous to find something that kind of combines everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what are kinds of things that you would like to work on in the future?
So I've been really interested lately in question answering tasks. So given a question, can we have a model that automatically answers that for you? So particularly, I've been interested in looking at news data and can we use this large wealth of information we have from the news to answer some common questions that people may have. So I think that that's probably the direction that my research is going to be going in next.
Ooh. And what do you think are some of the biggest challenges and or kind of opportunities in AI?
Yeah, so I think that a question that the field has been asking itself recently is particularly around like how can we ethically produce and release these models, and that's from anywhere from looking at the data that we're using, making sure that that data has been ethically gathered and that it is representative, and not, skewing or biasing in any way that could be harmful. Also to the actual models themselves, and making sure that we're not baking in potential harm into our models. So I think that this is something that the field and the community has been thinking about a lot recently. And yeah, so I think that that's going to be an important but challenge, an important challenge for the field and coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're dealing with like so much data out there, it's like making sure you collect it ethically
Yeah.
and don't do any kind of unintentional harm as well. It's like that is a
Exactly.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of speaking of challenges, so we've kind of got to the question from our previous New Voice in AI. So that was David asked, what challenges have you kind of had to overcome, and how did you sort of achieve results in the end?
Challenges I've had to overcome. So I think that because I actually didn't learn how to code until I started undergrad, and I sort of started learning how to code separately of my interest in the field, and then they sort of merged together. So part of the challenge has been I think playing catch up a little bit with my peers, and gaining some background on more of the technical side of our work. But I think that's also been really really fun part. And it's definitely given me perspective in terms of like the different backgrounds that people in our field come from, because I think that our field is very interdisciplinary. So it's good to work with people who have different perspectives, and for me to see like what that's like.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely draws on so many areas. And finally, what would you like to ask the next interviewee in this series?
So I think that AI is pretty broad, and there's a lot of different subfields that people work on within AI. So I'd be curious to ask the next person what about their specific subfield they find interesting or intriguing to them.
That's a really great question. That's really great. Cool. And finally, where can people kind of find out more about your work? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, so they can check out my website. It's isabelcachola.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Isabel Cachola.
Cool, brilliant. We will also have that information somewhere on the page as well, so you don't have to memorize that from just the video. Yeah, those are really brilliant answers. Thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And finally, I would like to thank you for watching and listening along. You can find out more about the series and previous episodes on AIhub.org, and please do join us for the next interview with Tanya Kaiser. And until then, goodbye for now.